if I hand you like a flawless blueprint for a skyscraper, the math might be absolutely perfect. The materials are meticulously listed. The structural engineering, completely checks out. But without the actual concrete and steel and the physical act of pouring a foundation, that skyscraper is never going to exist. It just remains this beautiful idea trapped on a piece of paper.
Right, because a blueprint inherently lacks mass. I mean, it
Yeah.
requires an active medium to translate that pure mathematics into a three-dimensional physical reality.
Exactly. And bridging that massive gap, like the space between an invisible idea and a tangible physical reality, is the entire premise of our deep dive today. For you, the listener who loves decoding complex mechanics, we are exploring a truly fascinating curriculum curated by Ben Hod.
Yes, specifically, we're unpacking Map 1, Unit 8 of the Eliphas Levi School of High Magic.
Right. And our mission here is to understand the actual mechanical physics of what Levi called magic.
Hmm.
And for anyone tuning in, we need to clarify immediately that this isn't about, pulling rabbits out of hats or waving wands. Okay, let's unpack this. What are we actually looking at here?
Well, it's far from the fantasy stuff. Eliphas Levi, writing in the middle of 19th century France, was attempting a radical course correction. He wanted to entirely strip away the Gothic romance, the superstition, all the graveyard theatrics associated with the occult.
He was really going for a hard science approach, right?
Exactly. What he proposes in this text is a rigorous, rational science of how the human mind directly influences physical matter. He basically argues that magic is not some chaotic violation of natural law. It's actually the ultimate masterful understanding of those laws.
And to even begin to understand how that works mechanically, we have to look at the tools Levi says we have at our disposal. Doing that requires a complete redefinition of human anatomy, doesn't it?
It really does. Levi breaks down our internal metaphysical instruments into three highly specific components. So first, you have intelligence. That is the blueprint we just talked about.
Okay, the map. Got it.
Right. Second, you have the will, which comes from the Latin word voluntas. That's the directed, forceful application of your intent. It acts as the engine. But Levi insists that both the blueprint and the engine are entirely useless without a third, highly misunderstood component.
And that would be the imagination. Which is wild because, wait, imagination. In our modern context, we treat imagination as a total distraction.
Yeah, we definitely do.
It's daydreaming. It's playing pretend. It's essentially the exact opposite of practical science.
But Levi completely rejects that modern, trivialized definition. He refers to the imagination as the diaphane, a term derived from Greek meaning translucent or showing through.
Showing through. That's interesting.
Yeah, for Levi, the imagination is not a fleeting sequence of make-believe thoughts in your head. He categorizes it as a literal plastic organ of the soul. It is the structural apparatus that serves as the bridge between the heavy physical density of your biological body and the pure, unformed energy of your spirit.
Wow. I'm visualizing this like a 3D printer. So the intelligence is the CAD file sitting on your computer.
I like that analogy.
Right. And the will is the power cord plugged into the wall, providing the voltage. But the imagination, this diaphane, is the actual physical filament. It's the raw material that gets heated up and extruded to build the final object. But I really have to push back here.
Oh, go ahead.
Calling imagination a literal organ just sounds like a poetic metaphor trying to pass as science.
Right.
I mean, if it's an actual organ, what is it made of? Biological organs operate in blood and tissue. Where does a thought take up space and acquire mass?
What's fascinating here is that specific question exposes the exact blind spot Levi saw in the scientific materialists of his day. They were busy dissecting the universe into physical gears and pulleys.
Just focusing on the nuts and bolts.
Exactly, while completely ignoring the invisible medium that allows energy to travel between 2 points. To answer where the diaphane operates, Levi introduces the concept of the astral light. He describes it as a universal agent.
A universal agent. What does that mean exactly?
He means a primordial, fluidic, electromagnetic medium that permeates the entire cosmos.
So the diaphane isn't just operating in a vacuum inside our skulls.
No, not at all. Your imagination acts like a specialized lens. It catches the reflections of your internal, invisible world and projects them directly into this external astral light.
And then what happens?
The astral light is the responsive medium that catches that projection and begins the slow process of coagulating it into physical manifestation.
Okay, I hear you, but that still sounds incredibly abstract for someone claiming this is a hard science.
Yeah.
How does Levi actually prove that this invisible fluid and this plastic organ of the imagination exist in the visceral real world?
Well, he bypasses flowery spiritualism entirely and points to something brutally physical, the amputee.
The amputee, like phantom limbs.
Exactly. Leva argues that the well-documented phenomenon of a phantom limb is empirical biological proof of the astral light's existence.
Because the patient still feels agonizing, localized pain in an arm or a leg that a surgeon has physically removed.
Precisely. The physical bone, muscle, and tissue are demonstrably gone. But the energetic blueprint, the translucent form generated by the diaphane and held within the universal astral light, remains perfectly intact.
So the body is reacting to something that's not physically there, but energetically there.
Yes, the physical nerve endings of the body are still firing because they are reacting to the astral matrix that survived the amputation. The form persists even when the matter doesn't.
That maps perfectly onto a deleted file on a computer. Like when you drag a document to the trash bin and empty it, the icon disappears from your screen.
Right. Visually, the file is gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But any IT professional will tell you the underlying data is still physically etched into the magnetic sectors of the hard drive until it gets actively overwritten by new information. The ghost of the file is still taking up actual measurable space in the background.
That is an excellent modern translation of the concept. The invisible world, for Levi, is a persistent structural layer of reality that we interface with through our literal nervous system. And he takes this biological interfacing even further when he discusses the concept of maternal impression.
Okay, walk me through that, because interfacing with biological cellular growth is where these mechanics get really heavy.
Yeah, it gets intense. He leans into an old hermetic and folk medical theory that a pregnant mother's intense, sustained mental images can physically shape the developing biology of her fetus.
Wait, seriously? By just thinking about something?
In Levi's framework, yes. The womb is a microcosmic laboratory. The mother's imagination isn't just idly picturing a baby. Her diaphane is acting as a master architect.
So it's actively building the physical form.
Yes, it projects a highly specific blueprint into the astral light, and the physical, biological cells of the fetus are forced to grow into that exact mold.
It's like throwing iron filings onto a table with a magnet underneath. The physical filings have absolutely no choice to align to the invisible magnetic field.
That's exactly how Levi sees it. The physical cells have to follow the energetic blueprint laid down by the diaphane.
For you listening right now, think about the terrifying practicality of that mechanic. If the imagination is the literal architect of biology from the inside out, then it absolutely determines the external circumstances you are pulling into your life today.
It's a huge responsibility.
It really is. You can have all the will in the world, and you can map out a perfect intelligence. But if your diaphane is constantly projecting a warped or fearful image, the astral light is going to coagulate your life into that exact shape. Your will is just firing blindly into a bad mold.
Which naturally brings us to the mechanics of what happens when this internal power extends beyond your own biology and interacts with the chaotic kinetic forces of the external world. A plague, for example, or a violent battlefield.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Levi makes a rather extreme claim here, doesn't he?
He does. He states flatly, "Fear attracts bullets, and courage turns back cannonballs."
Hold on. I am entirely on board with the psychology of confidence. I can clearly see how a terrified soldier might freeze up or make poor tactical decisions that get them killed.
Sure, that's the standard psychological view.
But literally bending the trajectory of artillery fire, that sounds like pure mythology.
Yeah.
Walk me through the actual physics Levi is proposing, because deflecting a cannonball stretches all credibility.
I know it sounds wild, but we have to look at the fluid dynamics he outlines for the astral medium. Fear, mechanically speaking, is an involuntary contraction of your soul's plastic mediator. You shrink inward.
Okay, so you're making yourself smaller on an astral level.
Exactly. And by rapidly contracting your astral presence, you create a psychic vacuum. Now, nature abhors a vacuum. When you are terrified, you are essentially opening a door and creating a literal vortex in the astral light.
A vortex that pulls things in.
Right. It pulls chaotic, external kinetic forces like a moving projectile straight into your center to fill the void.
Oh, wow. You are hauling the danger into yourself. The word attract literally derives from the Latin for to haul or to draw toward. You are magnetically dragging the bullet into your own chest.
Precisely. And courage operates on the exact opposite mechanical principle. The word courage comes from the Latin cor, meaning heart.
So it's an outward force.
Yes, courage creates an expansive, radiant equilibrium. A truly courageous person has harmonized their internal vibration to such an intense outward pushing degree that they project a repulsive polarity in the astral light.
So they become like a human shield.
They form a high-pressure psychic shield. The chaotic kinetic energy of a cannonball hits that high-pressure astral zone and finds no purchase. It is deflected away from the center.
He even points to the etymology of the word invulnerable, which is derived from the Latin vulnus, meaning wound. So true invulnerability isn't about your physical skin miraculously turning into Kevlar.
Right, it's not a physical
It
hardening.
means your will has hardened the surrounding fluid of the astral light to the point where your physical boundary is no longer permeable to external chaos. That is a wild reimagining of human capability.
It is. And to back this up historically and prove it isn't just his own theory, Levi brings in a monumental figure, Philippus Aurelius Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim.
Also known by his much shorter moniker, Paracelsus.
Yes, thankfully. Paracelsus is the crucial historical hinge here. He was a 16th century Swiss physician and alchemist who served as the bridge between medieval sorcery and what we now consider modern medicine.
He was a huge seal back then.
Massive. Paracelsus completely rejected the prevailing idea that the human body is an isolated, closed machine. He operated on the principle of the solidarity of all parts.
Because he was famous for practicing sympathetic medicine, right? He would supposedly treat a patient's wound by applying a healing salve to the actual weapon that caused the injury.
That's right.
Or he'd cure a headache from miles away by treating a lock of the patient's cut hair. Again, to a modern rational mind, treating a sword to heal a cut sounds completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
How does the astral light explain that mechanism?
Through the concept of energetic entanglement. For Paracelsus, and subsequently for Levi, the blood on the sword or the lock of cut hair retains a permanent, unbroken, energetic connection to the host body via the astral light.
So physical distance doesn't even matter.
Exactly. Physical distance is an illusion. If you introduce a healing resonance to the hair, that vibration travels instantaneously across the astral medium back to the origin source.
It sounds strikingly similar to the modern concept of quantum entanglement, where two particles affect each other simultaneously, regardless of the physical distance between them.
That is a brilliant comparison.
Paracelsus was essentially manipulating the astral entanglement of biological matter. I mean, he was so incredibly successful at this that he literally changed his name to Paracelsus,
Yeah.
declaring he was beyond Celsus. Celsus being the great Roman encyclopedist of medicine.
A very bold claim.
Very. He was stating that treating just the physical meat of the body was obsolete. You have to treat the astral blueprint that governs the meat.
Which implies a staggering, almost terrifying level of influence over reality.
Yeah, that actually raises a massive red flag for me. If the human imagination is this incredibly powerful, like if our diaphane can cure diseases from miles away, force biology to grow into specific shapes, and literally repel artillery, why aren't we all just chaotic gods accidentally destroying our own lives with every stray intrusive thought?
It's a fair question.
I mean, if I have a bad day and vividly picture my car crashing, why doesn't the astral light immediately manifest a car crash?
There is a governing mechanism preventing that, and to understand it, we have to look at Levi's concept of the verb, or the logos.
The logos.
Yeah.
That's a heavy theological term.
It is. The verb is the primordial, absolute, divine intent of creation. It is the infinite word. The problem with an infinite absolute force is that it is too vast and too formless to simply drop into the physical, finite world without destroying it.
It would just overwhelm the system.
Exactly. It requires a transducer.
An adapter to step down the massive voltage.
Precisely. The imagination is that instrument of adaptation. It takes the blinding, non-spatial energy of the universal logos and molds it into comprehensible, finite forms.
But you are entirely correct that imagination left unchecked is incredibly dangerous. Unfiltered imagination is just a fever dream.
It is madness. It requires a structural governor to filter the signal from the noise. That governor is reason.
Right. Levi states that imagination applied to reason is genius.
Reason, in this Hermetic context, is not just the act of being logical or making a pro and con list.
So what does he mean by reason then?
Derived from the Latin ratio, it is the faculty that mathematicalizes the universe. It perceives the cosmic proportions and the structural laws of reality.
Oh, I see.
When reason acts upon the imagination, it imposes strict geometric discipline onto those fluid, translucent images floating in the diaphane. Think of reason as the riverbanks that guide the chaotic water of the imagination so it can generate hydroelectric power, rather than just flooding a valley.
So if you have reason without imagination, you just have a sterile, dead machine. You have math with no physical output. But if you have imagination without reason, you have a psychotic hallucination.
Perfectly stated.
It's only when you lock the two together, when you apply cosmic mathematics to your creative fluid, that you unlock genius. And Levi is using the classical Latin sense of the word genius here, meaning a guiding divine spark. You elevate from being a passive observer of reality to an active structural creator.
This mathematical approach to truth leads Levi to radically redefine some of the heaviest theological concepts of his era. Post-Enlightenment France was a cultural battleground between the blind dogmatism of the church on one side and the cold, lifeless materialism of science on the other.
And he tries to bridge those two extremes.
He attempts a grand synthesis. He reclaims the word Catholicism,
Taking it back to its original Greek root, katholikos, which just means universal, or applying to the whole.
He strips away the institutional baggage completely. He argues that true Catholicity isn't about the Pope, the Vatican, or human authority. It is about the structural necessity of universal truth.
If reason reveals the underlying mathematics of the cosmos, then those laws are universally applicable.
Exactly. And he applies the same logic to the concept of infallibility.
Which normally implies a religious leader who physically cannot be wrong.
Right, but Levi argues that infallibility doesn't belong to an old man sitting on a throne in Rome. Infallibility is simply the natural attribute of absolute truth when it is viewed systematically.
Because the underlying structure of reality cannot lie to itself.
Yes, gravity is infallible. The mechanics of the astral light are infallible.
That completely transforms the definition of faith. Faith is no longer blind belief. Blind belief is just superstition. He defines faith as reasonable confidence in this cosmic mathematics.
It's a much more empowering definition.
It really is. For you, the listener, this means you don't have to turn off your brain or abandon logic to engage with the metaphysical. Faith is the intellectual certainty that your individual mind is attuned to the macrocosmic structure.
It's the working hypothesis that keeps you running the experiment in the laboratory until the final data comes in. Levi is positioning the true magus not as a sorcerer trying to cheat the system, but as the ultimate scientist of the spirit.
Perfectly aligning their individual will with the universal grammar of creation. Okay, so what does this all mean? We have the mechanics, we have the astral light acting as a universal fluid.
Yes, we do.
We have the diaphane doing the projecting, and we have reason acting as the mathematical governor. What is the ultimate role of the human being in all of this? How do we actually stand within this vast cosmic equation?
Levi points directly to the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph. It is the silent foundational breath before sound is even made. Look at the traditional scribal shape of the letter Aleph. You have an upper point, the yod. You have a lower point, the lower yod. And separating them is a diagonal line, the vav.
Okay, I can picture that.
Levi looks at this geometry and sees a human being. Specifically, a human pointing one hand up to the immensity of the sky and pointing one hand down to the density of the earth.
Oh, anyone familiar with the tarot will immediately recognize that as the exact posture of the magician card.
Yes, it represents the ultimate Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, but Levi upgrades the phrasing. He says, immensity equals immensity.
Immensity equals immensity. I love that.
The visible physical world perfectly balances the invisible energetic world. They share an identical, unfathomable scale. And the magus, the human being, is the living axis positioned right in the center.
So the goal isn't to beg the sky for favors, and it certainly isn't to tyrannically dominate the earth. The role of the human is to equilibrize them.
Exactly. You become the active conduit. By keeping both the upper and lower channels open, you avoid the trap of ungrounded mystical escapism on one side and dense materialist stagnation on the other.
You become the living, breathing bridge that allows the universal verb to translate into physical manifestation. You know, I want to bring in a brilliant modern synthesis of this.
Please do.
Ben Hod, who curated this curriculum, wrote a song explicitly inspired by Map 1, Unit 8, titled The Bridge. And the lyrics map onto this 19th century occult science flawlessly.
That's a great piece of art.
It really is. He sings about starting from a place of dense physical chaos, cold tile floor, and a cut-up grief, and moving toward the realization of these exact mechanics. He sings, one hand high, one hand low, something holy moving through my throat. That is the literal embodiment of the Aleph.
It perfectly captures the posture. And later in the track, the lyric, fear draws bullets inside your chest, but courage bends what the world calls fate, translates Levi's concept of battlefield physics into immediate visceral art.
It brings the dense intellectual theory into the actual nervous system. And the chorus brings the whole thesis home.
Yeah.
I am the bridge between heaven and earth. The wound and the wonder, the dirt and the word, it just encapsulates the entire journey.
It really does.
You go from being a victim of chaotic external forces to becoming the deliberate conduit for the word, the logos. The song takes this complex hermetic science and turns it into something you can literally feel beating in your own chest.
Which is the ultimate goal of Levi's work. I mean, he didn't write this to be abstract armchair philosophy. He wanted you to realize that you are the Aleph. The universe is not something happening outside of you.
It's internal.
It is literally packed into you, compressed like holographic data inside a seed. To change the external world, you do not look outward and try to force the physical pieces to move. You look inward to the well of the self and adjust the diaphane.
To summarize this profound exploration for you listening right now, magic isn't about breaking the rules of nature. It is about understanding the rigorous, hidden mathematics of the soul. Your imagination is a literal plastic organ projecting blueprints into a universal electromagnetic fluid. When you govern that imagination with mathematical reason, you achieve genius. You cease being a passive observer and become the active bridge between the immense potential of the invisible universe and the gritty reality of your daily life. You are the Aleph.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises an important question, which comes directly from Levi's text. He argues that everything in the physical world is suffering from a kind of metaphysical homesickness.
Metaphysical homesickness, wow.
Everything is trying to return to the unity of the one. So consider this. If all is within all, and you currently hold the entire blueprint of the cosmos inside your own mind, waiting to be projected, what deeply held belief or what unexamined phantom image are you currently projecting into the astral light?
Oh, that is a heavy thought.
And how is that specific projection secretly architecting the physical reality you're living in today?
Are you projecting the flawless mathematical blueprint of a skyscraper? Or are you projecting the phantom pain of a deleted file? It's a profound question to carry with you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
I used to pray through a cannabis haze, red wine rings on the sink for days, your lipstick ghost on a coffee cup, half-read books and the blinds half shut. I talked to God like a runaway thief, cold tile floor and a cut-up